The Chicago Bulls pick their guy. They go with Bryson Graham from the Atlanta Hawks. We got to talk about, is this the right move for the Bulls moving forward, or did they get this one wrong? And what could still be coming? All that and more in today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Let's go. Now, if you are new to the channel, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the page. Do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel. Only channel talking Chicago sports, how Chicago talks. So make sure that you stay in tune with us, man. So a little bit of breaking news here as we get this from Shams Charania. The Chicago Bulls go out and they hire Bryson Graham, who was most recently with the Atlanta Hawks, and I have credited him with making one of the tough decisions in that building of moving on from Trae Young and getting the team to a point where they finally end up making a playoff run here. This is per Shams. In totality, the Chicago Bulls are hiring Atlanta's Hawks senior vice president Bryson Graham as the franchise new executive vice president of basketball operations. Now, remember that phrasing very, very well. Sources tell ESPN Graham spent 15 years in New Orleans before joining Atlanta last offseason, rising from an intern to a GM, and now becomes the Bulls' top executive. A lot of people were expecting Matt Lloyd here, and I think that there's still a conversation to be had on that front as well. A lot of people were expecting them to maybe go with the Dave Lewin here, and I think there's still a conversation for that as well, because we had heard word that the Bulls are possibly looking to do things a little bit different here, like we have seen OKC do some things. But realistically speaking, if you're just talking about Bryson Graham right now, Shams also goes on to say Graham 39 has been known across the NBA for a tremendous scouting eye and being a part of successful finds in the draft and player acquisitions during his tenure with the Pelicans and Hawks. The Bulls conducted in-person interviews with candidates last week and mulled over 3 finalists: Graham, Detroit Pistons senior vice president Dennis Lindsey, and Minnesota GM Matthew Lloyd over the weekend before deciding on Graham on Monday. Now, this does not mean that the Bulls are done here, but just taking a look here at what Graham does, you see a guy who, coming up through the Pelicans organization, is credited with some really, really talented names down there, a lot of the talent that you saw. But again, he wasn't in a position to go out there and make a coaching hire. And I think this is where things could be a little bit different here in Chicago. But I also credit him with making one of the toughest decisions and the collective there down there in Atlanta, but one of the toughest decisions that I think Atlanta had to make to get themselves on track here, which is moving on from Trae Young, taking a player who, I mean, by all intents and purposes, the name alone sells tickets, right? And a guy who you look at and you say, if he gets hot, he's one of the most dangerous players in the NBA. But I have often said I felt that Trae Young was a inefficient shot chucker. And yeah, he's somebody that you want to have on your team for facilitating purposes. But when it comes down to the bottom line, he's not a guy that you're going to look at and say, hey, this is the end all be all. And so when you look at a tough decision to move on from a guy like Trae Young, who has had success all the way up to the Eastern Conference Finals, to go with the young core that you have there, I think that that's one of those decisions that you look at and you credit him for. Now, for me, of the 3 names that were available, this was the one that probably was third on my list because of the philosophy, or how long he went in New Orleans, right? And yes, you're picking talented players, but we're not seeing wins happen. But again, he's not in charge of selecting the coaching down there. He's not the one that is the end all be all answer in his time in New Orleans. And he grew to the point where, you know, he kind of was in that weird situation with Zion Williamson, ends up making the transition over to Atlanta and maybe doing what they wouldn't let him do with Zion down in New Orleans. But the end of the bottom line is, this is a guy that can go out there and find you talented players. You look at Derek Queen right now. He wouldn't have passed on Derek Queen if he was in Chicago last season. You look at I mean, even just some of the guys that they brought in, right? Like bringing in a DeJounte Murray down there, right? Like there are some really good names and some really young talent that you look at on that New Orleans team, and being a part of bringing in, I believe he was there the first year, was a part of bringing in Jalen Johnson, right? Some of the young talent that we have seen down there, and taking a chance on a player that a lot of people looked at and were like, I don't know about this guy. I don't know if I'm comfortable with Jalen Johnson drafting him in the for the Atlanta Hawks here because of what he did with his college, sitting out the tournament and things like that. Very similar to what the Bulls may be dealing with in a guy like Darren Peterson. But at the end of the day, this is a name that can see talent, can find talent, and that is one thing that we have been lacking here for the last few years. Now it is going to be, essentially as it sits, his show to run. Now, I did want to say this, though, because this is one thing that I would keep an eye on. Notice the title here. Right, everybody's going to sit here and say, "Oh God, it's all over." I don't know why you went and got this guy. You're taking a chance on a guy that we haven't seen do it at a high level and be the man yet. The title here is Executive Vice President of Basketball Operation. Executive Vice President of Basketball Operation. There is a team very similar with this setup where all of the people in that building have the title Executive President of Basketball Operations, and that is the OKC Thunder. And remember, the one of the final things that Michael Reinsdorf said was he wants to build his team very similar to what OKC has done. So don't think that a Matthew Lloyd is out of the question here. Don't think that a Dennis Lindsey is out of the question here. It just may be a little bit more of a different conversation on the role that all of these guys are going to have, because when you talk about Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations, Sam Presti holds that title. So maybe he is the top guy and you're going with the young guy here. Jesse Gold, another young up and coming guy, is a vice president of basketball operations. Rob Hennigan is a vice president, I should say, of basketball operations within the Thunder organization. So don't be surprised if you maybe see the Bulls go a little bit and try and build it in that sense where, hey, yeah, we got our vice president of basketball ops, but also we're going to bring in this name that maybe is really good here. We're going to bring in this name that really could be very good here, and build on some of those spots where, for me, when I look at Graham, I think that he might end up having some deficiencies. To me, I like the experience that Matthew Lloyd has. I like the relationships that Matthew Lloyd has. You just don't see it as much with Graham, right? You don't see it stick out as much. You see more of the scouting side stick out for him. And so to me, I would like to see somebody come in that does have those relationships. I would like to see somebody come in that does have that experience that you can also have on this staff. And I think they're going to build this out very much like what you see the Oklahoma City Thunder having built out in a very different kind of front office, where it is not just the president and the GM and everyone else underneath them, where there is a collaborative effort in that front office. And here's the thing, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. And so listen, the Bulls went oppo of what we thought they were going to do. The Bulls went oppo of a lot of what we thought they were going to do. Let me know how you guys feel down in the comments below about this hire. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. This is, and one thing that we were going to speak on the show tonight. We're still doing a show tonight with the crew in the building, so we'll be live again in a couple of hours here, but had to get out on this breaking news. One thing that I think you also have to have a conversation about with how the Bulls are doing this. Nick Friedel was on 670 to Score today, and he talked about how Matthew Lloyd was the obvious Bulls move. And not to say that he was the wrong Bulls move, but he was the move where it was kind of like the Bulls are doing this again. They're going with the same old guy. They're going with the same old system. They're going within the family. This is not Jerry going within the family. This is not Michael going within the family. This is, in fact, stepping outside and being uncomfortable with what possibly could happen here. Annie Frank, I think that's your name. There was a wild name. He said he didn't draft Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson was drafted 2021. Shout out to you for that update there. Let me pull up his full history here so that I can know exactly where he was at and kind of get an idea of some of the guys that he did draft there. But yeah, listen, this is going oppo of what the Chicago Bulls normally do, right? You're not going within the same family. You're not going with somebody that was in the facility, and that was one of the knocks on what could have been something against what the Bulls were doing if they were to go out and get Matthew Lloyd. Now, bottom line, I think Matthew Lloyd was the best guy for the job. the hope is here that you find the best guy for the job that maybe is kind of a little oppo of what the Bulls have done within their history here moving forward. Hit that like button if you like this hire. Excuse me, as I'm having a stroke here. Subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Why is it not pulling this up here? Boom, executive history. Thank you. Here we go. Real GM. So from the years of 2010 to 2011, he was hired as a front office intern by the New Orleans Pelicans. He was then the player development director 2011-2012. He was then the basketball operations associate 2011-2012. So this is all same year. Video coordinator from 2012 to 2013. So another video room guy. Director of college scouting from 2018 to 2019. So then moves up into some of those big scouting roles. Assistant general manager from 2019 to 2024 for the New Orleans Pelicans, was promoted to the GM in 2024 to 2025, but then got the heck up out of there, and then was hired as the senior vice president of basketball operations for 25 and 26. So you're really talking about mostly the Pelicans talent that they brought in there. I mean, within the Atlanta organization, not as many of the names that you're talking about. But again, within that time, you're talking about the Pelicans bringing in a ton of really good talent. And I do wonder if he maybe was one of those dissenting voices that said, we need to move on from Zion Williamson. We need to get Zion Williamson the heck up out of here. We need to find a way to get away from Zion and go to some of these other guys. They don't give him the opportunity. Maybe that was the conversation, because he would have gotten that job there, but ends up saying, I'm going over to Atlanta. Goes over to Atlanta, is like, like, Trey, gotta go. The first season that he's there. So I think that there's some intrigue there. I don't know if that's going to be a situation that happens here in Chicago. You just don't have players on the team right now that you're really worried about doing that with. But now that you have a GM in place, or I should say a senior vice president of basketball operations here in place, it does feel like there's a real opportunity maybe for the Bulls to actually start to make some real change, not a minimum to build some talent on this team. Let's see what Casey Johnson is tweeting out here. This is a quote from Bulls president and CEO Michael Reinsdorf on Bryson Graham. He said, we're excited to announce the name Bryson Graham as our executive vice president of basketball operations. Bryson is an elite talent evaluator who has earned tremendous respect across the league, and that stood out immediately during our process. He has worked his way through basketball operations from the ground level, and the experience has given him a deep understanding of how to build and sustain a successful organization. He's an effective communicator, a disciplined and thoughtful decision maker, and someone who truly connects with players and people. He understands today's league, today's players, and what it takes to develop talent and build a winning culture. Just as important, Bryson is committed to building a high-level group around him. He knows what he does well, and he is focused on surrounding that with strong leadership across strategy, scouting, and player development. This is an important step for our organization. We know there's work ahead, but we are confident in Bryson's ability to lead, build, and move us forward. Listen, we'll see, right? We'll see how it plays out. There's not a ton of history for me to say that this guy is great with. The 1 year with the Hawks, they made the playoffs and they made a tough decision. That's something that I think that you can, really put as a feather in his cap. And maybe there's some philosophy that you saw there, because I mean, what you loved about the Atlanta Hawks and how that team was built was there was this mix of veteran players, but also young players that needed to move the team forward. Yeah, you put a lot on CJ McCollum's plate, right? But at the same time, you also said, hey, if Jalen Johnson doesn't play well, it's GG's. Right? Like, I think that's the thing for me where you see the right amount of pressure put on the young players to go out there and be successful. Right? You're not going over the top. You're not sitting here saying that, if they don't find an answer as one of these young teams or young players here, that you just keep floundering at the bottom, right? You mix that in with some veteran players. Even going out and what he acquired Kuminga for, phenomenal. What he acquired Kuminga for? Listen, I wouldn't say that Kuminga is the end-all be-all. But for what he did acquire Kuminga for, not a bad deal. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this Bulls team operates under his tutelage. Again, let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. Now, I would be surprised. I will say this. I would be surprised if a Matthew Lloyd ended up being a executive vice president underneath Bryson Graham. I would expect that the Bulls probably go with some guys who were heads of scouts and different things like that in other places to be that, or maybe some guys who were up and coming that were viewed as GM candidates possibly in the future that maybe want to take a different step here. I would expect that to be the bottom line that the Bulls go with over going out and you know, bringing in Matthew Lloyd, or Matthew Lloyd deciding to be an executive underneath another executive. But it is going to be interesting to see how the Bulls try and build this thing out. Again, I think that this is a good hire for the Bulls. He was not the best on my list. Again, I thought Matthew Lloyd was the number one answer, but the Bulls going oppo of what the Bulls have done might be the right answer in this situation as well. And you can see some of the talent that he has brought in. I mean, just looking at Pelicans draft history, you're talking about guys over the last 4 or 5 years that if he had a say on these names, Jeremiah Fears. Well, Jeremiah would have been this year. Yves Messi. You've got a Dyson Daniels, who's been a solid player. EJ Liddell, who we liked in there as well. Herb Jones is in that conversation as well. Who else we got on there? Zion was before him. And that would be it for there. But again, like you're finding that talent. If you want to go back further, some of the guys that he probably scouted as he was the head of scouting, where we at? Zion would have been on that list as well. Nick Richards would have been on that list as well in the second round of that. So even finding talent in the second round, like there are some solid names that you saw them be able to go out there and bring in. And I think that that's when you start to see how a team is built, right? I say this all the time. The coach is important. The talent is the most important. The talent is the most important thing that you can get out of it. If you put talent in front of name any number of these coaches, you're going to see a guy that's able to go out there and, for the most part, get the job done. Billy Donovan with talent, fine. Nick Nurse going to the second round of the playoffs, fine. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing these guys when they have that elite talent on the court be able to do that. Now in a position of need here, I think this is going to be one where, let's see, what did it say? Since 2014. So he's been the scouting coordinator, director of scouting since 2018. So you're including a lot of names in there now. 2014 he was there. Nerlens Noel, nasty. Trying to see here, Donny Carr, Zion. Yeah, Zion's in there. Nick Richards. Kira Lewis is. Herb Jones is probably the biggest one. Zaire Williams, who you ended up moving to Memphis. Herb Jones, second round pick, too. That's crazy. Well done. Well done. It'll be interesting to see what the Bulls do here and how they go out there and build this thing out. You know what I mean? The continued question is, how are they going to build out the rest of this front office to put people in place to do well the things that you look at Bryson and maybe say that he doesn't do as well? Like, if we're being honest, the one thing that I continue to talk about, and he wasn't really in a position to make a change or make this move as the assistant general manager, but can you pick a coach? It's clear that you can find talent. Can you pick a coach? Because if you can pick a coach, now all of a sudden you're able to hit the ground running. And if you can't, can you get somebody in the organization that has the ability to find the right guy there? So we'll see what the Bulls end up doing here. Just wanted to get to this news. Y'all know we got to go over and pop on for Locked On Bulls. Let me make sure that no other we got more from Shams here. No, it's just a story on him. Okay. We'll see what ends up happening with the rest of this. Like the hire, don't love the hire. that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. Show me why I should love this hire, Bryson. Welcome to Chicago. We appreciate you for all the work that you will do, and hopefully you're able to knock this thing out the park. I do love the fact, though, front office intern all the way to senior VP of basketball operations. That's not bad. Those are the guys that you dream of finding a way to get in there. We will be back live in a couple of hours talking Bears here, so stay tapped in with the channel. If you don't have the notification tab hit, make sure that you have notifications selected. You go click on the bell, and then you select all notifications. And if you miss anything, YouTube has made this update where when you log into YouTube, if you look at your notification bell, it will show you everything if they don't send it directly to your phone where it pops up on your phone. So big shout out to you guys for tuning in and showing love. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Bulls go out and hire